Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about the Detroit Lions 2017 season review analytics. And we're getting into that time of the year where I'm going to be doing team-based videos going over all of the team statistics. So we're going over everything that I've talked about during the season when it came to matchup data and getting into all the areas where the Lions were above average, below average in terms of statistical data, and get into areas where they can improve. So I don't want this video just to be how bad the Lions were this year or all the areas where they failed. I want this video really to highlight the areas where you were above average, and of course highlight the areas where you can see some improvements so you can start to win more football games, because the ultimate goal with this video is to just show you all the areas where you're lacking, all the areas that are kind of meh, and then of course get you to that point where you improve and you're able to win more football games, and to give you a clear idea of all the areas specifically that you need to improve so that you can win more football games. So that is the goal of this video. If you're new to the channel, if you're new to the content that I provide, all terms and definitions will be in the description, so you can just go there. If there's anything that I'm talking about right now and you have no idea what I'm talking about, just go there. Especially when it comes to the charts and other sort of data, it's very helpful to just kind of go to the terms and definitions and kind of do this, give you your own sort of freedom to do your own kind of work and stuff like that to a certain extent. But let's get into the data. So this is the Detroit Lions in terms of the 2017 season. First off, big things to kind of focus in on is the offense. The offense was not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Their turnover percentage in terms of how many turnovers they allow on offense was not below average by any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't amazing, but it wasn't below average. Sack percentage was below average, so they gave up way too many sacks this year compared to every team since 1998. So that's definitely an area where there can be some improvement preventing sacks. Offensive score percentage was above average as well, 76.69 out of 100. So they were able to put points on the board on offense. Defensively speaking, this is kind of a weak point, sort of. Defensive offensive score percentage was 47.40 out of 100. So the ability to prevent points on defense was kind of below average in many ways. The good part of their defense, though, was turnovers. They had a very high turnover percentage, so they were able to create turnovers on defense pretty well. And their interception percentage was also above average. So just their general ability to create interceptions or get fumble recoveries and stuff like that was actually above average this year. So those are the positives about the defense. But the defense also had issues in terms of creating sacks. So again, not a perfect defense. Lots of areas for them to improve. But there definitely were some areas to give them some praise when it comes to turnovers and other sort of areas. When you get into special teams data, they had a very good punt return yardage average, but their kick return yardage was very below, like almost bottom of the bottom in terms of their kick return yardage. Defensive punt return yardage and defensive kick return yardage were above average. So both those areas were better. Field goal percentage was not amazing, but it definitely was kind of where it needs to be, at least for the averages in terms of winning football games. Extra point percentage was below average. Punting average was about average. And then their overall score was 68.82, which is above average. So this Lions team, compared to every team in the NFL since 1998, was above average from a statistical standpoint. There were some things that they did pretty well. Their offense was able to put points on the board. Their defense was able to create turnovers. And they did do some things well on special teams. But overall, they just weren't exactly dominant or elite in any one area, except for maybe punt return yardage this year. So definitely lots of areas for them to improve. Now, when you look at this Lions team compared to every Lions team since 1998, lots of areas where they kind of regressed was on offense in many ways. Their turnover ratio, they turned the football over a lot more this year compared to 2016. They allowed more sacks this year compared to 2016 as well. The ability to put points on the board also regressed. The defense actually kind of got better. I mean, the defense went from being significantly below average in 2016 to at least average in 2017. The ability to create turnovers also went up. Interceptions went up. Sack percentage went up a bit, at least from 2016. and the special teams kind of remain constant in terms of most of the other sort of data points, except for their punting average kind of went from above average to below average. So in many ways, the offense regressed, the defense got a little bit better, in terms of the overall data. So it's kind of hard to figure out this team in some ways, but as you can clearly see, I mean, there was some improvements from 2016 to 2017. It's just that there also was some regression that also hurt things. So in terms of how this Detroit Lions team ranks out of every Detroit Lions team since 1998, they were pretty much the third best team, statistically speaking, since 1998. And I understand a lot of you guys are going to go, what? But again, this is the Detroit Lions we're talking about. So in many ways, again, this was an above average football team, statistically speaking, this year. It's just that they had a lot of issues. They weren't a perfect team. So, those are just some things to kind of think about going forward in terms of overall data. Now, when you get into the areas where they need to improve, so this chart right here basically looks at what the average score is on all the metric stuff I just talked about. This basically goes over the average score for teams that win 12 to 16 wins or more, 9 to 11 wins or more, 8 wins or more, or 7 wins or less. So this basically just gives you a general ballpark area where they need to get to. Like, this is just sort of a guideline to this is where they are, and they need to get to here in order to potentially become a 12 to 16 win team, a 9 to 11 win team, etc. And when you look at this data, it's pretty clear they need to get better on offense. They need to get better on defense. They need to not turn the football over as much as they did in 2017 if they want to start winning more football games. They need to not allow as many sacks. They need to get better in terms of offensive score percentage. They need to get better in terms of defensive offensive score percentage. And sack percentage also needs to go up as well. But everything else is actually fairly decent. So if they come back next year with the same defense in terms of the ability to create turnovers and create interceptions and improve defensive offensive score percentage, improve sack percentage, improve on offense, so they can do those types of things, I think they'll inch back up into the more win category. So this Lions team, I should say, it shouldn't be viewed as like on a downward spiral as much as there's just a couple tweaks here and there that if they can get a little bit lucky in the draft or free agency, they could tweak those things a bit and get better. So I do think there is some hope for this Lions team, but they can just get better in these certain types of areas. And lastly, when you look at the 2017 Detroit Lions, based on other sort of data points, so all this data, the data I'm showing you right now, is other sort of data points that I don't normally talk about because it's just way too much stuff to keep track of as the season goes on. But it's the end of the season now, so now we're discussing it. And again, and of course, go to the description to get all terms and definitions if you're not familiar with any of this stuff. But this was the 2017 Detroit Lions team based on every team since 1998 with all these other sort of data points. And ultimately, it's kind of hard to get a real clue on what went wrong. A big thing that did regress the most this year was the running game. Last year, they had an above-average second down conversion rate with the run and third down conversion rate with the run. This year, they were below average on first down, below average on second down, and below average on third down. So in many ways, the running game regressed pretty hard this year, which I think probably speaks to some offensive line woes potentially. Just looking at the data, I would say there might have been some issues with offensive line. There could have been issues in terms of the running backs they had. This is just a general kind of view of everything else like that. The actual ability to convert with the pass has been fairly decent. First down conversion rate, second down conversion rate, and third down conversion rate are all where they need to be. But ultimately, the running game was the big thing that regressed this year, and may have had something to do with the issues that they had on offense, or may have been a combination of stuff. So ultimately, where do the Lions need to improve this year? I think on offense, they definitely need to consider getting more offensive playmakers just to be able to put more points on the board, whether it's running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, whatever. I mean, again, you can never have too many playmakers. On top of that, I think offensive line, definitely a big issue that needs to be addressed. That sack percentage is not where it needs to be. They need to be not allowing sacks at a much better rate next year. So ultimately, they need to get better in terms of preventing sacks and doing stuff like that. And I think if they do that, their offense, I think, will naturally get better as well. And of course, on defense, they need to just keep building on defense. They need to get more guys to sack the quarterback, and they need to. And I think ultimately, if they get a couple more defensive playmakers and get a couple more guys to sack the quarterback and create pressure on the quarterback, I think the defensive offensive score percentage will also naturally go up and go from there. So I think there's a lot of promise with this defense if they can just add a couple players here and there that can make some plays, and especially sack guys that can create sacks. I think if they can do those types of things, I think you'll see a lot of improvements next year. So ultimately, those are all the areas that I would target in terms of free agency and the draft. And if you can get better in those areas, I think this is a team that could be on a upward spiral type of team, but very easily, because even though the offense did regress, even though the offense had a lot of issues, the defense did show a little bit more promise this year than it did last year. And if you can just make a little tweaks here and there, I think good things will happen. And of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know. Hit that notification button so that you're always reminded when another video of mine drops. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.